everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sasquatch Out of the Shadows Live. As always, I'm your host, Alex Pedikov. I hope everyone here is doing well tonight. Just running a little bit late here, but that's okay. Been running around like crazy. So hope everyone is doing well so far. We're going to have an awesome show tonight. A lot of interesting stuff to talk about. We had a really great show last week with Scott from the Bigfoot Mapping Project. I definitely recommend checking it out. And if not, just go check out the links that are in that description. Go check out the Bigfoot Mapping Project. It's a really cool app, really great map as well. Definitely can be useful for certain things in this topic if you're curious about maybe sightings in your area, in your state, that kind of thing, and really get a good visual where they might be. Check that out for sure. So that was a great show. For all other shows, there's a link down below in the description that has a link to all previous shows. We're almost at 100, so almost there. We're in the 90s now, which is great. Thanks to everyone who's always tuning in and everything. Next week, we'll actually be speaking to Cindy Cadell, who is a researcher out in the Pacific Northwest. She works with the Olympic Project, as well as for some of the National Forest Service out there. So she has a little bit of an academic background. So we'll talk to her about that. Should be really, really interesting discussion. But for tonight's discussion, we'll get into that in a minute. I'll bring all of our guests on, but I do just want to say hey to everyone in the chat. Of course, we got Brian and Chewie, Brian will be on the show. Maybe Chewie will make an appearance. I don't know. Hey there, Cindy. Ronald Garvey says, sup, little brother. Hi there. That must be Brian. I didn't connect the last name there. That makes sense. I thought it was about me. I'm like, that's weird, but that makes perfect sense now. We've got Chain Reaction. How's it going? My Eyes. Hey, everyone. I can't wait to hear what is happening in my neighboring state. Oh, cool. Where are you at in which state? Leave it in the comments. I mean, if you want to. I'm assuming it has to be either Massachusetts, Vermont, or Maine, right? I think those are the only states that border us aside from Canada. So very cool. We got Dave Green, probably just Chewie's tracks. We'll talk about that for sure. Angel Nolan, Macy Fraser, what's going on? Scott Dunbar, how's it going, Scott? Mike Casey as well. Hope you're doing well, Mike. Peggy Curtis, how's it going? I know there's a bunch of people popping in the chat. Started doing this, so I'm just going to say hey to everyone at the beginning before we get into it. Got Brent from the Tall Ones. So what's going on, Brent? Hope you're doing well, man. Jody as well. Hello from Oklahoma. Hello and welcome. And moving on. Roger Blair, Fivehead, everybody else in the chat. I know there's a lot of people popping in. We got Bigfoot Society. There, Jeremiah, what's going on? Nikki as well. Jay Fritz, how's it going? All right, guys, let's get right into it. So tonight's show, we're going to be talking about New Hampshire Sasquatch. That's my state, as well as the state of a bunch of the guys that are going to be in the chat, or not in the chat, on the show, I should say. We've got a couple of awesome folks, so we'll just pop everybody in here. I think we may be missing Evan for now, but we've got Brian and Chewie Go Hiking.
Karac. Hey, what's up, Alex?
How you guys doing tonight?
Good, man. Good. Good to be on. Good to be on again.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome to have you on, man. Obviously, we've had a pretty interesting weekend, and we'll get all into that, but we're missing Evan right now.
Yeah.
Of New Hampshire Sasquatch. I think he's in the car right now, and he says he has not great service. So hopefully, he texted me that. So hopefully he'll be able to pop in, because obviously I think it's definitely integral to the story. But
for sure.
Let me just pop this guy on here. Oh man, that's gonna kind of cut my head off though. If I have this banner up here, right? So we'll just get rid of the banner for now. That's fine. Just think it looks kind of cool. So, guys, obviously, New Hampshire Sasquatch, that's kind of the topic. You guys are New England guys. I mean, Karac is a fellow New Hampshire, right? Like I am. Brian, you are a New England guy. You're down in Rhode Island. So,
yep.
But
you guys know New Hampshire's my home.
Yeah. We know. We're trying to get you up here, man. You got to get up here. Yeah. So, for folks that don't know, Rhode Island is southern New England. So, a few hours drive up, and you're in awesome state of New Hampshire. One of the best states, I might add.
Yeah.
Might be biased there, but
I was going to say no bias there at all.
No bias at all. Totally fine. But so what's really interesting is you both have had encounters in New Hampshire, as the Granite State is kind of the state moniker. I've had possible encounters, nothing I can definitively say. I've talked to tons of witnesses. I've got a ton of sightings in my database that I'd be happy to talk about as well. But Maybe real quick before we get into this, and kind of while we're waiting for maybe Evan to pop in, if you guys want to both just kind of talk about briefly your encounters, or I mean, you can go into as much detail, I suppose, as you need. But Brian, if you want to start us off,
oldest goes first.
Yeah, there we go. You guys have both told your stories separately on the show, but I think since we're doing a New Hampshire show, and before we get into it, I do just want to say for folks that might not be familiar with New Hampshire, it's a small northeastern state. I mean, we're one of the smallest states. Actually, here we go. Evan is back in.
Here we go.
In his vehicle, you can hear him.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you're probably going to lose me maybe once more.
Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna let these guys share their stories before, and then maybe we'll have you can repeat your story too if you're in a position to do so before we kind of talk about this weird trap.
Yeah, I think he should tell his story last because that leads right into what happened.
That makes
a good idea. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. You got it'll make a lot of sense, guys. It's just like totally crazy what happened, but we had an action-packed.
Yeah, if you can give me like 20 minutes, if you can give me like 15 minutes.
Gotcha. No worries, dude. If you want to just mute your mic and just let us know whenever that works. So, so I just want to preface with New Hampshire. So, people that don't know about New Hampshire, and I'm just going to mute you if that's cool, Evan, just because there's like the car sound for now. So I'll just keep it, or I guess he can mute himself.
It is to be seen and not heard. I understand.
Yeah, he's in the car. I get it. It's tough, but just to preface, so New Hampshire is a small northeastern state that it's only got 1.3 million population, and so we're bordered by Maine to the east, Vermont to the west, Quebec, Canada to the north, and Massachusetts to the south. Very small state, but it is the second most forested state in the United States. About 89 to 90% forested, I believe. I mean, I've heard different numbers, but there's just woods everywhere here, and I think you guys can both attest to that. Much of southern and central New Hampshire are heavily wooded, residential. I mean, there's neighborhoods and stuff, but there's large tracts of woods, large state forests, and then about a quarter of the state is actually part of the White Mountain National Forest, which stretches apart into Maine as well. And this is, I don't know. Do you know the number off the top of your head, Brian? How many acres are in the White Mountains?
Wow.
That's probably, I'm putting you on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot. Let's just say a lot.
It's at least it's at least 2, I would say. About 2.
So yeah, it's totaling over 115,000 acres.
Oh, wow. That is a lot.
So, I just had to look that up real quick just to be sure, because I know it's a lot, and there's a part that juts into Maine, and then you have northern New Hampshire, which is Coos County, the least populated area, actually, where the Wood Devil kind of legend is from, and that area is pretty interesting. There's a lot of reports. I mean, there's just a lot of reports everywhere, but we'll get more into that. Just to kind of preface New Hampshire, very wooded state, very sparsely populated, and it connects to very heavily wooded states such as Maine, which is the #1 forested state in the U.S., and then Vermont, and there's just a lot of woods, and there's a huge amount of moose. New Hampshire doesn't have as many as Maine. Maine has almost 70,000 moose, according to some estimates. New Hampshire's got about under 10,000, but there's that border section between northern New Hampshire and western Maine where they come and go, and that Moose Alley area in Coos County has one of the highest populations of moose in the U.S. in one area. I mean, I've driven up there and seen 12 in a weekend, and then other times I'll go and I don't see a single one, but you'll see a lot of signs. So these habitats that, it's northern Appalachian kind of woodland areas for the most part, deciduous forests, a lot of pines as well, cedars. So
a lot of thick areas too, where if you're walking on trail, you can't see that far in. It looks like you're walking down a hallway. Just because how thick the vegetation gets in the summertime.
Oh yeah, green. It's almost like a green tunnel. I know they say that about the Appalachian Trail, but it's similar to other parts of the Appalachian Mountains, but definitely different than down south in say Georgia and North Carolina, West Virginia.
What do you compare it to? Because you went to what do you compare it like with the Adirondacks and stuff
like
that?
It's to the Adirondacks is actually a very, very good comparison, like the White Mountain region, because from what I understand, both the White Mountains and the Adirondack Mountain Range used to be part of the same chain. So geologically, they're actually more similar to one another, but they were divided over time. And then you have the Green Mountains in Vermont, which are smaller than both the Adirondacks and the White Mountains, that are different from both of those mountain ranges. They were kind of one that popped up in the middle. And you've got, of course, Lake Champlain and that whole area there. So it's the Adirondacks is very similar to parts of New Hampshire. But yeah, so those areas are very wooded. The White Mountains, of course, there's just a lot of hiking and recreation and skiing, but there's a lot of unpopulated areas, just like
lots of isolated ponds, lakes, where there's nothing for miles.
And this is a good point that Kevin Hamilton says. Moose aren't friendly anywhere. Very dangerous critters.
I tell you what, I had that moose encounter, man, and my dog was more scared than me, but I was scared.
So around here in the woods, I personally am not usually scared of black bears. For the most part, the only times black bears are really dangerous is if they know they're big and they're just used to humans. Like if they've been fed or if they have been digging in people's trash, then they don't have a fear of humans. That's when usually Fish and Game kind of department will put them down. But moose are by far the biggest threat around here and in other areas where there's moose, because they can get agitated easily. They are monstrous animals. I mean, if you've never seen an adult full-sized moose, and the eastern moose that we have here, which is one of the 4 subspecies in North America, is, I think, the third largest, I believe. You've got the Alaskan moose, the western moose, and then the eastern moose. And the Shiraz moose is a little bit smaller than the eastern moose, and they're huge animals.
And how hard it is to see a moose.
And they're massive. I mean, they can be up to 1,200 pounds.
And they're massive. The one I had an encounter with on the trail, it was massive.
Yeah.
And I was walking by the thing as it was eating the vegetation. As I told you, I didn't know at the time what shook the branch. You know what was on my
because
mind.
It's high up, right? I mean,
it was like 9 feet up. It was 9 feet up. I remember as soon as I was walking by and I see the branch shake, I just 180, and I just turned around like 30 yards. And I had my little GoPro, and I'm just waiting to see that thing. I'm like, I'm finally going to see this thing, because of course my encounter comes back from 2003.
Right.
And I'm just thinking about my encounter now, like that all just flushed, and what a rush of adrenaline.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I'm like, I'm going to see this. I'm finally going to see it. And then here comes that big old moose plopping up on the trail, and I was like, oh, and I just froze solid. And I told you what the dog did. Like my dog will chase anything a deer and lower. He is going to beeline it and chase it. And he was scared. So when he sees something big, he's scared.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, they're just huge animals. And
Karac, I could have walked under its belly.
You remember those prints we found up in Maine?
Yeah. I was going to say, in terms of how hard it is to see these things, we got that. What we said was probably footage of a moose over in Maine because of that thing that was walking around the camp. What was that? A few feet into the woods, and you can barely tell.
Massive animal.
And and the same with me.
And Karac found that big femur bone.
Yes, that's right.
Absolutely massive. So they're huge animals, and I'm not going to turn this into a moose show, but I just do want to talk about the habitats in New Hampshire and even into southern New Hampshire support massive ungulate. I mean, the largest animal by far around here. They're doing relatively well. I mean, there's been issues in the past with the ticks, the winter ticks on them, but they're still pretty stable here in Maine. I mean, there's seasons for them in both Maine and New Hampshire, so they're doing pretty well around here for the most part, give or take. So there's a ton of wildlife in New Hampshire, a ton of different animals. We got black bears, foxes, red fox, gray fox, coyotes, fishers. Tons of ungulates, as I mentioned, between moose and deer. So food sources galore. There's 4 seasons, kind of. There's a great fall season. There's a brutal winter. There is a very kind of rainy, usually spring season. And then there's a very mild summers. I mean, it doesn't get usually hotter than the 90s at times. I mean, even in the 90s is kind of a rarity for the most part in New Hampshire, especially up in the mountains.
I was just going to say, up
the
on the
humidity
mountains,
drops.
30-degree difference up on those, in northern New Hampshire.
It's wild. So there's a lot of varied habitat and very small population of humans, like I said. And with that said, we do have a good amount of sightings. I mean, not as many as other states, of course, since it's a smaller state. But I do. I'll just get right into letting you guys tell your stories after just one comment here.
Yeah,
Ryan
sure.
Smith says, "I'd rather run into a Sasquatch than rutting a moose any day."
And that's it. I just stayed still because I didn't know if it was the rut. I didn't know enough about moose because that sucker had a full rack. And like I said, I could have hunched over with my big old pack on, and I could have walked under its belly. It was that big.
And they can get brainworm, which can cause them to act irrationally. There's been attacks on snowmobilers. I don't know if in New Hampshire, but I know in Maine there have been, just because there's simply more of them. I mean, so there's just a lot of them in that area. So pretty interesting. But Ever see a pine marten in the whites? I personally haven't. I know that they're up there. There's a couple different species of martens from what I believe, from what I'm aware of. I've seen a stuffed one in like a display about the White Mountains, but I haven't seen one in person. But we get fishers, which are fisher cats, also known, absolutely nasty, and they scream at night and sounds like a woman screaming in the woods. And I think a lot of people maybe would hear that and weren't familiar with it, would think Bigfoot or something more horrific than that. So. But anyway, all right, guys, I'll shut up now.
No,
Brian, go. Let's just start with the stories because, as I mentioned, basically out of the four of us, you guys have had some pretty interesting encounters, possibly of Sasquatch. I have had, the wood knock kind of stuff. Nothing.
Yeah, the wood knock.
Nothing I could say 100%. So.
Yeah, but with what happened with me in 2003, that's what started this all for me. And like I told you, how long I kept that to myself, just because I didn't know what it was that night, but we'll go into that now. It was the end of August of 2003, and it was me, my girlfriend, and my son at the time was 5.5. We're like, let's do something fun at the end of the summer before he starts his first year of school. Let's take him to Storyland in New Hampshire, northern New Hampshire. It's just a small amusement park for children. Evan, New Hampshire Sasquatch likes to call it Redneck Disneyland. So
it's a fun place.
It's a fun place if you're a kid.
When I was a kid, I went. It was fun.
It's all little rides for children. So we spent 2 nights at this campsite. We were supposed to go there on Saturday to verify which campsite it was, but we didn't. As you know what happened, we didn't get to go up to northern New Hampshire on Saturday. Yeah. But we're pretty sure it's Glen, New Hampshire, at the Glen Ellis campground,
which is a beautiful area.
Beautiful area, and there is like a river and that runs right through it, and that's what I Google Earthed it before this past Saturday because I wanted to make sure we were going to go to the right spot to just go back to where I had my encounter, and so the second night at the campsite, last night. I was the last one to go to bed. I went to bed probably when you have to put the fires out at the campgrounds. Like, what is it, 9, 10 o'clock? I don't know what it was.
Quiet. A lot of campgrounds have
quiet time.
Hours, yeah,
exactly, quiet time. So I go and I told you, like I tell everyone, I am awful in a tent. I can't sleep in a tent. Like I struggle to fall asleep. I'll toss and turn, and I'll just lay there. For that night, I'm just laying there for hours, and I'm starting to get pissed because I can't fall asleep. Like I have to drive home the next day, and I can't fall asleep. So I'm just there, and where our campsite was in this campground was right on like a river, to me it was like a brook where we were. It was like about maybe 8-9 feet across with just big boulders. Like I could rock hop across if I wanted to, but the water was moving pretty good. So if you fell in that day, you were going for a ride down the water. Like it was moving pretty good to where I could hear it in my tent at night. I could hear the water flowing, I could hear the crickets chirping. So I'm like, all right, I'm just going to listen to the water and hopefully I'll fall asleep. So I'm still laying there.
The Ellis River, I should mention that.
Glen Ellis River. That's what it is. That's from what I saw on Google Earth. It's the Glen Ellis River. So I'm laying there, eyes wide open, and anyone knows when you first turn your lights off in your room, it's pitch black. But then when your eyes start to adapt you can see a little in the dark. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm just looking and staring straight up at the tent, and all of a sudden I hear this impression start grazing right across the tent. So the tent I had, it was a big 6-person tent. So it was a big green 6-person tent. I think my brother, it's still at my mother's house. I'm pretty sure I still have the tent. So from where I noticed the impression was probably right at the door of the tent. So when I told you it's like a 6-person tent, it's a decent sized tent. You could stand up in it and walk around. It was that tall up. So it was a decent sized door on it. And the impression was right above the door. And I'm like, who's this asshole messing with me in the middle of the night? I'm thinking it's a person, like a drunk person, like a drunk camper, just messing with me and messing with my family. So I look up. I'm up on my feet were at the door of the tent, so I could just watch it go across. And as soon as that sucker went across, I'm like, I'm getting up and I'm gonna see who this asshole was. It lets out that guttural, that growl, that a deep growl to a grunt. And I'm telling you, when that grunt, when it made that grunt, man, it went right through me. Like it vibrated my chest to where I was like, holy shit. And I just drop right back down. I drop back down. I turn, I look at my girlfriend and I look at my son and they're asleep. Now, this grunt, it wasn't loud. It was the depth. It was the depth. It was the vibration it gave off to where after it made that noise, all those crickets, nothing. It went dead silent to where I'm like, what the hell was that? I'm like, that wasn't a person. A person can't make that sound. A person cannot do that vocal, what I heard. And when people ask me now, like, how can you, like, what can you compare it to if a person can't make that sound? And I said, listen, I've been to a lot of concerts when I was younger. You get to that front row of a huge concert and you're in front of that bass and they're and it's just pounding through you. That's the closest thing I can tell you to. Or like Evan would say, a cat purring on your neck, like a cat laying on you and purring, that vibration, but times 10. You know what I mean? To where I froze solid. Like I froze solid. And when you hear something like that you've never heard before on TV, you've never heard it, like you're dumbfounded. I was so confused that I just laid there all night. I laid there and I was scared. I was so freaking scared that I told you, I put the pillow over my head like a freaking baby. Like I felt like I was hiding in the tent and I didn't want to move. I didn't want to make a sound because I didn't want that thing coming back, you know, and just talking about it, replaying it in your head, and it all comes back to you that night like it happened yesterday. Like the detail of what happened, that sound, and just it's something that you never forget. You never forget. And that for the rest of that night, I just laid there wide awake. And I told you, I didn't feel safe until I heard the birds chirping and it started to get light out to where I finally got that, like I felt a little more safe because it was light out. Like now, whatever that was isn't going to be around. And I when I got up, I mean, like I told on another show, I said, I was a rookie camper. This was my first time camping. We left out our marshmallow sticks. You know what I mean? We left our everything. All our food was out in the cooler. Didn't go through it. That thing just, in my opinion, that thing came over that brook, came over the Glen, the river.
That was river, yeah.
Where my spot, I told the spot I had was such a prime location to where if you wanted to just rock hop and go into the woods, and it was just dense woods after that river, you couldn't see. It was so dense. And I told my son, like, you can't go over there because of how fast the water was flowing. But I think it came from the woods and was just coming right by, and for some reason ran its hand along my tent and let out that grunt to where I was like, oh shit, like. But the next morning I got up and I looked around. I looked around. I was 23 at the time. I was 23 with a 5-year-old kid. I was just a young kid with a kid. You know what I mean? I didn't know how to take it. I didn't know. I said nothing to them. I didn't tell my son, and like I told my son 2 years ago, when I came out with my encounter is when I started to tell the people that were there what happened that night. And but I buried that away for 17 years. It took me 17 years to finally be able to talk about it. But I wouldn't have been able to talk about it if it wasn't for shows like Monster Quest, that came out in 2009. Finding Bigfoot came out in 2012. That's when it started to kind of get the ball rolling in my head. Like, started to get me thinking, like, when I'm hearing these tent encounters, when I hear that John Mayenzinski tent encounter on Monster,
that's the one I wanted to ask you about, because that's obviously the one that.
When I heard that, it's like even just now a blood rush just came right over me. It just an adrenaline rush right there, because someone else experienced the same thing I did thousands of miles away. It's the same thing. He was getting messed with in his tent. So when that moose encounter happened for me, it brought back 2003. It brought back that fear of being scared stiff. So that's when I'm like, oh my God, like I'm gonna film a Sasquatch right now, until the moose pops up. But ever since that day, I went on YouTube. I started putting in Sasquatch in New Hampshire. You know what I mean? I just started whatever information I could get to help me with what happened to me. And then when you hear similar encounters, I remember when I got my confirmation, like with the whole tent thing, is driving up to New Hampshire to do a winter hike. And I got hooked on Sasquatch Chronicles. When I went on YouTube and you type in Sasquatch Chronicles, it's going to pop up. So I just started listening to encounters, and I'm like, oh my God. And I got fixed. I was hooked. So I'm listening. And I'm like, you know what? I'm caught up to the new stuff. I'm going to go back to episode 1, and I'm going to listen to every encounter and find out how many people have had tent encounters. And then one pops up in New Hampshire, and it's a woman that was camping in her yard in New Hampshire with her kids, and something was messing with them while they were in their tent, running by, grazing their tent. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, it's happened to other people. Like it's like, I'm not a nut. Like I didn't make this shit up. Like it's happening to other people. And when you hear that, when you get that confirmation, like when I heard, I'm like, dude, I jammed the brakes on. I'm going 70 on the highway in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
That I hear that, and I was just, oh my heart starts pounding. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what else could it have been that night that could do that? And you hear people, you hear other encounters with the people that have felt the vocal, not just heard it, but felt the vibrations. Like when you had Doug Highcheck on, that was one of the first podcasts I ever listened to, was your show on this, because when I had come out with my encounter, you reached out and was like, hey, in this.
I remember seeing your comment in some Chronicles or something like that on Facebook, and you said New Hampshire, White Mountains, and then I saw your profile and you did a lot of hiking, and I thought, well, I do a lot of hiking up there, and I wanted to talk to you.
And I tell you what, man, I'm like, the reason why I told my story out there while I was hiking was like a month after my dad died, and I was just in such an emotional state, because that's the one thing me and my dad shared. Even though we didn't live close, he lived in Arizona, and I live in New England. Right. I didn't get to see my dad a lot, but we could always talk about hiking because we both loved hiking. So I was just so emotional on that hike, and I'm like, I gotta tell my story. Like I gotta tell people what happened, because I felt like I had nobody to talk to about it, that could understand. Like I know I had, you want to tell your family, but you don't want to be ridiculed. You don't want to.
Yeah. I saw comments earlier. I think it was your brother, right?
That's the first time he told me.
Yeah, the hair stood up on my arms, total chill on my body. And he also said, you didn't tell him initially. And he's like,
I told my brother the week after my dad died, when we were in Arizona. I told him what happened because of just the emotional state I was in, and I figured that was something I could share with him at such a shitty time for us. And I'm glad I did, because he feels the same way I do about Sasquatch, and
sure.
And I'm glad I told him. Like I'm glad I told my son. Even my mother just found out. You know, like I didn't tell my mother called me up yesterday because of course after what happened this Saturday, man, like the jubilation, I just had, you know, family calling me, or I was calling family and being like, oh my God, like you can't believe what happened to me this weekend.
Right on. So I gotta, unfortunately, Karac, if you want to tell your story, I have to restart this browser, so I won't let me share my screen for some reason. Google Chrome denied me that unless I restart it. So I'm gonna pop out for a minute. So,
okay.
I mean, if you guys want to keep the conversation going, I'll be right back. This is just really, I don't know why it's doing this, but sure. I'll be right back.
I was very scared for a second that was going to end the live stream, but luckily it didn't. So one thing I want to say about your sighting, Brian, that's interesting to me is that whole feeling the vibration thing, because I hear that pretty, like when people are close to when they think they hear vocalizations, that's like a really common thing.
All right, we should be good now.
And I tell you, Karac, when it made that noise, man, it was probably, I'm going to say, not even 6 feet away from me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you said it was
about 6 feet away. Now, after the graze, after it went all the way to the end of the 10.
Okay.
It did the grunt.
Right.
Yeah. And that's when I was going to go up to get up after the whole,
right.
And then whoop, right back down. Back down.
There we go. It's working. I just wanted to share some pictures. I don't know if I can zoom in here a little bit. These are just some pictures of that Ellis River area up there in northern New Hampshire. Just a beautiful, beautiful spot. I mean, you can see up in the national forest. There's just a lot there, a lot to see. Tons of woods, tons of forest. But
and you know, and this has been another encounter in that same campground just recently. I know Evan has all the information on that because Evan.
Yeah, someone commented on Brian's post, I'm pretty sure. Or was it the one beforehand? Brian. I think it was the one beforehand.
I think
because they brought up the Glen Ellis campground, and I mentioned that you had one.
Interesting.
Something walked through their camp, and they said it was extremely heavy, whatever it was.
I saw my brother if I smelt anything, and there was no smell. I smelled nothing when that happened. No smell, nothing. But the one thing I heard was the breath before it growled.
Interesting.
I didn't know if it was an exhale with the growl or it happened. It was so quick, the breath to the growl. It was weird. It was weird. It was something that had a set of lungs on it that it was so confusing at the time. So confusing.
Oh, sure. Yeah, a lot of new people in the chat as well. How's it going? We've got there was a really interesting comment I wanted to read. Yeah, here's from Joe over at Western New York Bigfoot Investigation Group. Says, my biggest hope for you guys is you get as good of a look as it is when I did. You'll never forget it and never question yourself if they actually exist ever again. I know. I mean, Karac and Evan have seen something more.
Yeah.
And I saw a lot.
Yeah. All I saw was the tips of the fingers.
Right. But that's
it's
still interesting
to terrify me.
But Joe, I'll talk to you about that. I know.
Yeah, Joe. I love Joe's encounter.
I've heard his story. Rasta, I think he calls it.
I love the way Joe goes by it. Goes about it. Like he's like, I don't care if you believe me or not. But
sure. Absolutely. I mean, good way to tell your story,
man. Like it's
for sure
to the point of no return.
Absolutely. So Karac, if you want to share your encounter, because I know we got this thing here that I'm dying to show people.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah.
So this was, it's funny. So I had sent this report into the BFRO database actually while back when it actually happened, and I got to talking to Crystal Panic, who is the BFRO researcher for New Hampshire, about this. And there's the only detail that seems to be a discrepancy is the date, which makes perfect sense because I'm horrible with time. I don't know I'm pretty sure this happened before 2012, but it seems like I sent this report in 2012, but I'm pretty sure it happened in at least a year before that. So we'll say 2011 to kind of make that difference. So around September 2011. I was living.
How old are you, Karac? Hey, sorry.
No problem.
You were just a kid, weren't you?
Yeah, I was 12, and I would have been.
Wow.
Well, I was 11. I was either 11 going on 12 or 12 going on 13, depending on what the correct date actually is. This would have actually happened just a few days before I turned whatever, 12 or 13, and I had we lived in this big piece of property that was just tons and tons of forest in southern New Hampshire, and we were in a town where like there was less than 1,000 people. So the whole thing was just trees, and sometimes you get a house, sort of thing. And
are you comfortable sharing the name of the place? Or
yeah, sure, Lineborough, which is
okay.
It's like around maybe 30 to 40 minutes from Nashua. People know Nashua better than they know Lineborough, obviously.
It's like southern. It's kind of between. It's towards if you're going towards Keene, New Hampshire, perhaps.
Yeah. If people sometimes know Milford, it's like 10 minutes from Milford.
Yeah,
5 minutes from Wilton or so. And so I had locked myself out of the house by accident because I like to just kind of hang around outside, and I was killing time basically. So
these are some. I'm just going to scroll through.
Yeah. That's
these like
Purgatory Falls, I think. Really cool place.
Beautiful. So there's a lot of nature there in Lineborough area. I'm just you can keep going with your story.
Yeah, sure.
Straight here.
So I was out there for probably a good maybe like hour and a half or so, just kind of hanging around. And this must have been probably around. I must have left the house maybe around like close to 9 o'clock in the morning, and this happened at around maybe 10:25 to 10:30 in the morning. It was overcast, and it was getting more and more overcast, and you kind of have, you can smell it when the rain's about to come. And I had been locked out. My parents weren't awake yet. And so, being a kid, I didn't want to wake my parents up. And so I walked up our driveway. We had a very long driveway, and there were several houses on our property. And our neighbor, right before you get to what would have been his front yard, there's this log on the side of the driveway that has some trees hanging over it. And so that would have been, I figured, good rain cover. And so I sat down and just decided to kind of wait for a bit until it seemed like an appropriate time to knock on the door. And I heard this rustling behind me, and I liked watching animals, so I figured I'd get a good glimpse of like a chipmunk or a squirrel or something like that. And so I turned around, and I'm bad at distance as well, so I'll try and do this in feet. But it was less than like 300 feet. It was probably close to 100, maybe 125 feet away or so. Was this this big like shape? This big black dark shape, and it's like the darkest shade of black I've ever seen in my life. The contrast between it and the background was immense, and I remember distinctly that it was standing behind this birch tree that it was this old rotted birch tree that had been snapped in half, and the half that had been snapped off was actually leaning up against the tree, so it was kind of like a V shape, almost. And it was definitely standing. It was something that was on two legs. And I actually, when we were talking about my report a little bit 2 weeks ago or so, Alex, I got to making a sketch of it because I had a sketch that I originally made but lost. And just to give a good idea, I have it right here, actually. So this is basically what I was looking at. And so an example of like the closest thing I've been able to find to it is the...
Can you hold it up again?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. The closest thing I've been able to find to it is the Provo Canyon footage.
Your finger's just in the way of that bottom part.
Yeah, sure.
It's perfect.
Awesome. Yeah. So I was pretty, dumbfounded by that. And I don't know whether or not I was like making eye contact with this thing or something. I really can't tell because, there's no facial features that I could really see. Right. But it was standing very still for about 10 seconds. And so I got the impression that it was at least aware that I was there. And I have a small diagram off to the right there that shows what happened, and it turned is what happened. It turned so that it's what would have been its right shoulder, the back of its right shoulder was now facing me. So if I'm looking at me, it turned like this basically, and it just walked
away. Like
yeah, I remembered distinctly when I say walking, I saw it bobbing up and down. And there were some vegetation there, and I don't want to add details that weren't there because sometimes people do that just by accident. But I have this memory of seeing these shapes coming up and down in front of it, and I think those might have been knees, but I could be wrong on that. was obviously, being a kid, I was pretty freaked out by that. So I ended up knocking on the door and going back in at that point. Didn't tell my parents. And I had other weird things happen on that property. I had a rock throwing incident and something happening with whistling at one point. Never saw anything again, but definitely had some strange interactions at some points. And the most I was able to do for kind of investigating that afterwards was when I kind of was able to get the courage for it. I did measure up to where I recalled its head being on the tree, and that was about 7.5 feet off the ground. And
interesting.
Well, yeah, and what I thought was interesting, especially, was I mentioned from the front, it looks like the Provo Canyon Bigfoot. Kind of very stumpy, these very big. It had really big shoulders. I remember that, really wide set shoulders. And at the time, I thought it had a small head, which when I got more into Bigfoot, I thought was kind of weird because I don't really find these small head reports. But remembering what it looked like as it turned, and I could see more of the back of the neck, and the head was taller, what I realized is it looked as though, at least, it was kind of that thing that Grover Krantz talked about, where what he mentions in one of his documentaries that he appears in, he's talking about the Patterson-Gimlin film. And someone asked him, why does Patty have to turn to look at the camera kind of dramatically? And, well, he said, when you look at gorillas, for example, they've got these really high shoulders. And gorillas cannot turn their head to look at you because their chin actually runs into their shoulders. So they either tip their heads way back, and you see that in a lot of photos. They tip their heads back to look, or they turn their whole body. And I realized, or I shouldn't say realized, I became to be under the impression that what I wasn't looking at was a small head. It was a head that was low set on the body. And because it was all one color, I couldn't see where the head ended down there.
That answers this question, I believe.
Yes, yeah, right, exactly. It was.
Thanks for that question, Dave, by the way.
Yeah, it was more that I was seeing, I think, a low set head from the front of the body as a silhouette sort of thing, because I could see that it had a larger head when it turned. It had I remember when I saw the back of it, it looked very conical on the head. The slope was more apparent in the back. Maybe that slope comes a bit forward, and that's why I couldn't see it as well from the front. It was roughly conically shaped, but again, like a small mound. So I don't really have any more details to give on that, unfortunately. The rock throwing incident that I had, which is a brief description, was a few years later. And some friends and I were just throwing rocks down this area that's kind of this really rocky incline, maybe down about 100 feet or so into the forest. And that's where an old quarry is, actually. And we have these old bricks in the property because some of my house is made, or my previous house anyway, is made of brick. And I think that's probably where it came from. And so I picked up a brick and tried throwing it because, a kid, oh, how impressive would it be if I threw the brick all the way down? It just kind of tumbled the way down. We all got kind of bored and went to turn around. And we took just a few steps turning around, and we hear bang. And we look, and the brick's been thrown back up the slope. And the bang was it cracking in half on one of the rocks at the top of the slope. And that, to me, was like, something with hands has to do that. And I really doubt that Arnold Schwarzenegger's just hanging out on my property down at the bottom of this slope. So that was, I would say, maybe even more significant than the sighting that I had. But yeah, so those are the two experiences. I had one incident where I was whistling and something would whistle back and forth, and that was in the end of 2016 or so. And that was the last thing that I had happen there. And
pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Here's our buddy Tate is in the chat. He says, question, Brian, can you make Alex laugh? Yeah, he can.
No,
Tate.
Brain, can you make Alex laugh?
See, you made me laugh, Tate. Tate makes me laugh. It's true.
It's a big guy. I just had him on the podcast.
By the way,
Tate's ears must have been ringing on Saturday because we were talking about him.
Coming forward with your stories of your encounters definitely takes guts. Good on you, mate. Absolutely.
Hey, thanks, Tate. We said nothing but good things about you, man, and just how funny
Tate,
you are.
No, Tate's just you guys have seen him on the show. He's just fun to be around, especially on shoots and stuff like that. Jeremy Boisford. I don't know if either of you guys know him.
I know of one.
Okay, yeah. So he says any sightings near Goffstown area. Yeah, I've got in my database that I have one, a Class B, so that means not a visual, of the woods near Manchester and Goffstown, Hillsborough County. It's a long report. I have it, and then I have one from near Ware, and I don't know if I'm sure Evan has some too, but
I've got one from Wilton that I can talk about too.
Yeah. So
I got one from Wilton as well. Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
There's a lot of interesting stuff going on in that area for sure. And again, I mean, I think there was a question about the terrain in New Hampshire. If you want to rewind a little bit, we talk about going
the
over
terrain,
that.
and someone had a good
Gabriel asked from California. I know the terrain in the Pacific Northwest. How's the terrain in New Hampshire? Can Sasquatch sustain themselves in the woods? Is there berries, vegetation? So we talked about at the beginning. This is the northern terminus, kind of the Appalachian Mountains. New Hampshire and Maine, two of the most forested states by percentage of forest in the country, support some of the largest Maine for sure, and New Hampshire right behind it has the largest amount of moose population in the lower 48. So the only places that beat Maine in terms of moose are parts of Canada and Alaska. So there's plenty to support giant mammals like that. So just rewind a little bit. We talk all about it. Not going to rehash it just again. But I appreciate the question, Gabriel.
Yeah, for an example, like when we were just out the other day, what did we go in? Maybe we walked a mile or two in.
Yep.
All the deer.
So much deer sign.
I couldn't believe how
deer,
much
turkey.
I couldn't believe how much game is just going through there. That's the most piles of deer crap I've seen while I've been hiking. And of course,
it was a lot. We were right on a trail. I mean, we were on a game trail. So we're leading into kind of the topic here of the trackway. So I think that's a perfect transition into talking about Evan's sighting. And I know there's a lot of questions and comments, and I appreciate it, guys. We're trying to get to as many as we can. But I do just want to get into kind of talking about the track. But I think Evan sharing his story is a perfect segue because that really is the reason why, that happened. So Evan, with that said, take it away.
So my encounter actually happened in 2018 on the night of Thanksgiving. I was out riding around later at night. I was a little depressed at the time. I lost a very close friend of mine that I considered a brother. He passed away, unfortunately, the month before. So I was in Rockingham County, and I'm not going to disclose the road name right now.
Yeah, I think
or
it's
the
best.
town.
Smart.
But I was coming around a curve in the road, and my high beams caught what I thought was a reflector on the tree. Reddish, like auburn, amber color. So as I get closer, I see this thing. Well, its right arm raise up and kind of shield its eyes. And as I stop, what I'm guessing, well, now from what we saw on Saturday, since we got some measurements, Brian and I, probably about 40 to 50, maybe 60 feet away, I came to a halt in my car. And what I saw was a male Sasquatch. We took measurements judging on that broken branch on the tree it was standing next to, that it was indeed 7.5, just a little bit above that, feet tall. The creature itself, not too bulky, but it had a real athletic build. But its legs definitely were stockier than the rest of its body. As for its arms, hung down lower than what a normal human's arms would be, but it was all proportional when it came to terms of the creature. The hair on it, probably about, I'm going to guess about 6 inches. It was black. Little tufts here and there that had pieces of frozen snow, ice, frost on it. I'm guessing that was probably from the steam from its breath, and its sweat was freezing and making these little matted parts on its hair. So back to what it was doing. So the creature had its right arm raised up over its eyes, and then it slowly lowered, and it's just looking at me with this disappointed this parent, scolding their child face like, what the hell are you doing here still? I'm guessing that it probably expected me to drive on instead of stop. But at the moment, I was in such awe, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm actually seeing one. Because obviously I know what Sasquatch is, but I never really expected to see one in the flesh. So as it's looking at me, we have a little bit of stare down. I doubt that it could have seen me past the high beams, even though the high beams weren't that powerful. And it kind of puffs out its cheeks, almost like it's grunting at me. And a plume of steam just leaves its mouth. And then it just retreats down the hill towards to where the pond is. And what I'm guessing is it went down the hill and it took a right and circled around, because I didn't see that creature after that.
Yeah.
Incredibly detailed.
I mean, I know you saw other details, and we don't have to get into that, but I mean...
Yeah, Brian's just going to pick on me.
Can I just mention something real quick about details? When you have something so terrifying happen to you, it could be 19 years ago now for me. It's so fresh, it's so stained in your brain. Like Karac, he was a kid, and he can remember the detail.
It scars you.
It scars your memory to where you'll never forget it, and it's like slow motion when it all happens.
That's what I've heard that time.
It felt like slow motion.
Yeah,
it replays in your head too.
Yeah, when I was looking at whatever I saw for 10 seconds, I remember the first people that I told, and I forget who they were now, but one of the first things I told them about that was that it felt like I looked at it for 10 years. It was like ever that you were staring at.
And you got Jay Fritz in chat, 55 years.
That's right. His encounter is pretty interesting too, yeah.
And he tells it like it was yesterday.
Yep.
Karac, do you know the gender of your Sasquatch that you saw by any chance?
I couldn't tell the details.
Brian, shut up.
The broadness made me consider that it might have been a male, just because you would kind of expect maybe a female to have maybe less broad shoulders, but it's not like I've seen a female definitively either. So
yeah,
the sexual dimorphism there, for one thing, might not even exist for all I know. And second, I wouldn't know what to tell anyway.
And for the head, was it the facial features? Do you relate it to more like a proto-human, like Neanderthal kind of like?
The most I can say for facial features is what kind of the side profile looked like when it turned. And this is what I always tell people. From the front, it looks like the Provo Canyon photo. From the angle I was looking at it at, I was basically looking at it from the same angle that Roger Patterson would have been looking at Patty when she's walking before she turns to look at the camera. So basically behind her, but a bit slanted. And the profile of this thing's face looked like that. So there was this very
heavy brow.
Yeah, heavy brow, a bit of a protrusion down here. Not like an orangutan or a gorilla where it's like out this far, but a bit to where you could tell it wasn't completely flat-faced.
Yes, as I recall mine, it looked like a native person.
Interesting.
Or a person of Pacific Island descent.
Very interesting. And so Joe adds, I'll be honest, it will be 2 years soon since I saw Rasta, but a day hasn't gone by where I haven't seen that face in my head. And this is just me speaking as somebody who's interviewed a ton of people who have had encounters. I mean, I will flash this here for a second. My database that I have, I've talked to a bunch of people, and time again, I hear that story of, for example, we were talking about that sighting in the Ossipes where the guy saw it in the structure the other day. Brian and Evan and I were talking about that.
Yeah.
And this happened in 1979. And he said, I remember, I have it written down in my notes when I talked to him over the phone. He said, not a day goes by that I don't think about this incident. Yeah. And I mean, you think about how many things go on in your life, and that is still something that, and it happens to people who have had traumatic events, things that have happened that have changed their life. In a lot of cases, this is that, but I do just want to share this real quick, and I'm gonna flash it real quick because I don't have I don't want to share a lot of this stuff, but this is just so in my database I have about 45 reports, excluding unverified YouTube/Facebook comments. And what I do is I'll get something like that and I'll try and verify and follow up on that. But I mean, you can see, I think I've got 51 pages on here.
And what I love about
this includes some of your guys' reports and others that I've gotten, and people send me maps of where things happened.
I can send you my sketch as well, Alex, to add to that if you want to.
That would be perfect. So,
yeah, I'll send the sketch for mine as well too.
The reason why I showed that so quickly is because a lot of those people, they don't want that story getting out in the public. So this is something that I obviously have in my collection, and at some point, maybe I'll publish it in some form and keep people anonymous and that sort of thing, because I think these are valuable stories in the sense that I talk to so many of these New Hampshire people that they don't think anyone else has had an encounter like that here. In some cases they've never heard of the topic, or they've heard of it but they think it's Pacific Northwest, or they think it's Florida. I didn't know this thing was here. And
I thought the same thing. Yep.
It's very.
I want to make a note about that just really quick, because I think it's a really important subject that you just mentioned. The whole, people don't know that people have seen these things. I've got a map here of Marlborough, New Hampshire, which is a case that I've been investigating for a bit.
Marlborough monkey.
Yep. There are 2, if you're counting John Horgan's original publishings, which weren't that well known at the time.
No.
So mainly 1 on the BFRO, but let's say 2 reports that were public in Marlborough. And while I was making my documentary on this, let's see, how many do I actually have on here now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it makes me wonder, is the statistic for every 2 sightings that are reported, there's 11 that go unreported?
It's nuts. And I have a bunch from Marlborough. We probably have some of the overlapping sightings, of course.
Oh, absolutely we do.
Karac and I have collaborated. When I get a Marlborough sighting, I send it to him, or vice versa, because we had this whole very weird kind of set of situation there with that case. But I do just want to read this comment. I think this is a great point from Ted Forrester, who says New Hampshire and Maine, and the reason why we have to, you can't talk about New Hampshire without talking about Maine. They are kind of joined at the hip when it comes to that wilderness. But it says New Hampshire and Maine are so forested, so remote compared to the rest of the U.S. I keep saying this over and over, but Maine is a lot more active than people realize. Maine is just over 1 million people. Yeah, and then another point was, you need to have people, as you need to have a population to report sightings. Maine has no population, but the PNW does. That is a fantastic point. These states are very sparsely populated for given the size and the amount of woods and territory. So, it's interesting. It really is.
It is. Yeah. That whole thing with people needing to report sightings. I mean, I think that might be the key to some of these cases, really. When I had stuff happen recently in Marlborough, it was because I looked at this map, looked at all these dots, and thought, that's where all the people are. What about over here where there's no people? And the first day I'm there, weird stuff happens.
Sure. Well, here's a fair point as well from Grasshopper. Says, Ted, the Cascade Range is millions of square acres of forest on mountains that go up and down in a steep kind of way. Nobody's out there. Absolutely. I'm sure there's a longer history of accepted Sasquatch culture in a place like the Pacific Northwest, whereas here, people still, loggers, people that are in these industries that work in the
land, people with private land that don't want anyone coming on.
They don't want anyone trespassing, because the Pacific Northwest, you have millions and millions of acres in between Northern California, Oregon, and Washington that are owned by either the federal or state government. So anyone can go on there, right?
What are you going to get
New Hampshire and Maine?
Yeah. What
it's all private land
out of telling their story.
Nothing. They don't want people stupid. They don't want Bigfoot hunters to come on their property. They don't want that kind of thing. Even now, like loggers and people who work in the outdoors, they wait almost until they're retired to share their stories.
Yeah,
I've heard that number of times.
Yeah, Evan just had an awesome encounter. It was just 2 Fridays ago in the presidential range. A daytime
Route 16.
sighting.
Yep.
But she didn't want to do an interview. She just wanted to tell her story, where it was, and that's it. She didn't.
And that's how a lot of people feel too.
And that's a majority. And you guys know, that's a lot of it. A lot of people don't like sharing their story.
No, a lot, especially when there's no culture. Like I said, in the Pacific Northwest, you can joke about it, but people will take it seriously. As my buddy Connor Anderson over at the North American Bigfoot Center says, you can go to a bar and say, has anyone seen a Sasquatch? And people may make some jokes, but then 20 minutes later, you'll have a bunch of people come up and tell you their stories. Well, here, it's like that, but even worse. People you'll get made fun of. You'll be the Bigfoot guy, all that kind of stuff. But the more and more we get these stories out in the public, the more we can get in terms of data, in terms of people sharing stuff. When we talked about this last weekend with Scott, or last week when we were talking about the Bigfoot mapping project, making it, being able to see that data, just being able to share that kind of stuff, I think is important to let people say, well, hey, like Brian, you didn't know for years. You didn't want to share. So now if somebody has your encounter in 2022, they can log on and maybe find us or find something, find the Mayans encounter.
I thank people. I thank people like you. I thank people like people in the chat that I talk to all the time. People that have similar encounters. It's almost like therapy for me.
Yeah.
Well, here's Papa Craig says, I did wait until I was retired to shoot my mouth off.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Lots of stories like that. Yeah.
It's really interesting. There's just a lot of great feedback and everything. But yeah, I think just making that more culturally known, because then we can look at these reports, determine if they might be credible or not, if it's just one of those Bigfoot on the brain kinds of things, because that does happen with pop culture, and you've got shows like Expedition Bigfoot and others that are less than truthful, we'll put it that way, in terms of presentation of stuff. But there's people are experiencing something. You guys experience something, which brings me to I'm just going to show this now.
Are we finally at the point?
And we'll talk about it. So you're not going to see a lot here, but this is what we have from last week.
There's some great photos that I'm sure you can post.
The photos and
the photos show a lot of clarity for that point.
Let's talk about it. So this past weekend, I was I'll tell from my perspective, and then I'll let you guys take over. I was just having a lazy Saturday, whatever, just lounging around, and I get text and frantic calls from, I don't know if they seemed frantic, because I was getting texts and calls from both Brian and Evan. Said, hey man, we found some really weird looking tracks up here. What should we do? And then I called you guys, and basically what ended up happening is I rushed to get my stuff together, went to Home Depot, bought some plaster of Paris, didn't have any dental stone or hydrocal or anything like that. So I stuck with the plaster, went out there and helped them. And what exactly happened, guys? Tell it, why were you out there, and what was the circumstance?
Me and Evan have planned this trip for probably Evan, over a month? Probably over a month.
Well over a month, yeah.
He came back to me a few months ago. He's like, hey man, he's like, you want to start a podcast with me? You want to co-host a podcast? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, because whenever me and Evan talk, we go for hours, man.
Oh yeah.
Hours. And I'm like, Evan, that sounds perfect, man. I'm like, we can bounce off of each other. We could, share encounter stories, kind of make it more based for New England area type of podcast, like campfire chats, talking about encounters, of course, for the people who want to talk about that.
I do just want to say, and Evan, he has on his Instagram, he shares a lot of stories that he gets. He gets a lot of reports like I do, but he puts them out a little bit more publicly. I'm just not at that stage yet. And again, I'd have to talk to some folks about that. But
so Evan, he gets a lot of stuff. Yeah, Evan can speak for himself. He gets a lot of reports. As both you guys, all you guys, you get a lot of reports. So we were like, oh well, let's go back to our encounter spots, because I haven't been back to mine since 2003. And I'm like, I want to know. I want to be for sure what campground it was. Me and Evan have been going back and forth on this. There's only so many within a 20-minute area of Storyland, because I couldn't remember the campground, which the name of it back then. But that campsite is scarred in my brain. Like, I know when I pull up, I know exactly where my campsite was. So let's take a trip up to New Hampshire. We'll go to your encounter spot. We'll film it, talk about your encounter and what happened. And then we'll drive all the way up to mine, which is probably another 2-hour ride up north.
Yeah, it's a 2-hour ride from there.
Go up to the presidential range area. It's a haul. So that was our plan for this past Saturday. I was going to spend the weekend up there. We were going to do that, and then I was going to go hiking on Sunday. I was just going to go do a couple mountains. So I started up there.
If I could just cut you off one more time, I'm sorry to be rude.
No,
but I always lose these comments later on. So Ted Forrester says, I didn't tell anyone outside of my immediate family what I saw. It was in 1985 until about 10 years ago. What I saw was lean, near 7 feet tall and solid black, no features, nothing like Patty. I do just want to say, Ted, I don't think I've seen you in the chat before. I'd be really curious to hear about your story if it's New Hampshire or Maine. Feel free to email or message one of us and just let us know, because I'd be really curious to hear about that. And with that being said, again, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So
exactly.
Evan's like, so when I met up with Evan, it was, I don't know, around 9:30 in the morning.
I got there at 9:20.
He's like, what do you want to do first? He's like, do you want to drive up to your place first, or do you want to go to mine? And I'm like, well, yours is closer, man. Let's go. We'll go to yours first. We'll look around. We'll document what happened. And it was just going to be like a good first episode for our podcasts. You know, coming up.
It was just supposed to be
really great episode.
Me reciting my encounter at the encounter site.
And I remember you guys had told me about just you were both going up to your spots. And in the past, so I knew you guys were kind of doing this.
You knew what we were doing. Yeah. So we drive to a spot. We park the van. We park his vehicle. And we get out and walk, and you know me, and anyone that watches my YouTube channel, like I'm always, when I'm out hiking or anything, I am GoProing. So I got the GoPro out, and we walk into a spot, and he's showing me, like, I'm seeing all these weird, as we were driving on the road, all like these divots and scuffs on the trees, and he's like,
so that's from the snowplow.
He's like, the snowplows get so close that they whack the friggin' trees. So where he could remember where his spot was, because there was a scuff mark on the tree. So so we're walking there, and I'm filming, and I'm like, oh, so this is where it was right here. And he's like, yeah, there's the scuff. And he's going down, and I'm panning, I'm following him. And when you watch the video, like, I go right, you see that track as I'm panning to him, and then seconds later, he's like, wait.
Well, I had to stop Chewie from stepping in it because I was going to say something to you. And I was like, Chewie. And I was like,
dude, I'm like, I see that too. So he goes down to it and he starts picking the leaves off the front of it. And he's like, I see toes. And, you know, I'm what is great about why I had the GoPro on is you get my reaction. You know what? You get our reaction. And it's just F-bombs. I'm F-bombing. I'm like, oh my effing God. Like, holy fucking God. I'm like, so I'm going nuts. So we're like, what do we do? I'm like, he's like, I got 4 pounds of casting. He's like, I have 4 pounds.
Well, before that. So I'm like, so I'm looking around on the ground. So there's the rougher one that was in between the tree. Well, the two trees.
Yes.
That was in the pile of leaf litter. That wasn't great. And then I told you, it's pointing towards the other side of the road. Let's scan for the other side. And as soon as we're walking over to the other side, he spots out.
I could see that thing.
Track.
I beeline right to it. And I'm like, dude. And he's like, dude. And I'm like, dude. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like,
here's that first.
That's the first. That's the first one we saw walking to his encounter spot. From 4 years ago.
I want everyone. So that everyone knows, that track was literally found probably between 3 to 5 feet away from where the Sasquatch that I saw was standing.
So you guys, you see this one, and then
I see this one. We see the direction it's pointing. You know, we found one before it that was in bed. Like, you could tell there was a big impression, but it was covered with leaves, so there wasn't any kind of impression or anything. But you saw another impression before it. And then Evan's like, let's see if it went across the street. And that's when we go across the street, and boom, I just see this there were leaves on it. So, but all I saw was how deep this impression was. So he starts uncovering off the leaves on this one. And he's like, I see toes. I go ballistic. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, we got to call Alex. So we call you right away. And
I think I got to my phone like 10 minutes after you guys.
Yeah, there was no answer. And dude, I don't even know where I put my phone after I called you, because I had a missed call.
And I know the service wasn't great out there.
Dude,
and like I said, I rushed out there
and
we saw, and I saw these impressions. And I mean, my initial reaction with this one was, it was a little bit hard for me to tell, but then literally right across the road, and there was about 25 feet between, there's a dirt road in this forested area with a pond where the tracks were coming from. Up on this embankment, there was this track, which is shown here. And again, I mean, I'm not again, but that photos, I feel like I've said this so many times, photos really are so hard to do justice to anything like this. I mean, and so basically the track, you could kind of see digits of some kind, and I make no claims about what these tracks are. I went out there, I helped them cast the tracks, and made sure we documented the whole, with all the proper information about what you'd need for any kind of scientific, just data in terms of the conditions, what it was like there, the weather, date, all that kind of stuff, just the basic data, that hard data that you can just write down and say, all right, well, this is what was corresponding data to finding these tracks.
And the tracks, we might as well get into the size. So when we see the tracks, it's funny because
these were the possible kind of digit.
And you know what?
Here.
I think you can see it better right when I get it with the GoPro and I go right up close, and the way the shadow was with the sun, I got a really it was so pristine to be able to see the 4 digits, those toe impressions. And then
which is which again, very hard to tell on the photos.
It's so hard to tell in the ground.
You could in real life, I mean, in reality, I could see it pretty clearly. I mean, and I had asked, I think initially, what this was here, this little thing. I think you guys had said there was a piece of a stick.
There was
so there was like a small, like, broken off piece of stick that was just like
I have us on, and I have on the GoPro us uncovering, what we took off the track. I just uploaded it before the show.
Yeah.
The whole like 30 minutes of what happened that day.
We filmed the entire.
Because you measured film, and I have a lot of film.
And just to be completely transparent, I got there, I took a look at it. We started getting supplies. I had a 20-pound bag of plaster of Paris. I gave Cliff Barrickman a call actually because.
Because
he's just really good at casting. He has cast probably more than most people have with plaster, every kind of material you can imagine. And those tracks were these two. So these were the ones going up. They were going up an embankment, and I don't have the video here now, but you can see this embankment where I am. So the tracks were going up. So I called Cliff because I wasn't entirely sure about how to cast on an incline like that. I have experience casting. We've cast moose prints, other wildlife, but I've not cast on an incline like that. So I was a little nervous. Cliff was suggesting, well, maybe you can make a dam around it, or you could mix the plaster a little thicker. So I said, I'm going to mix the plaster a little thicker. And the crucial part was that track going up that was in that dirt. That was the one that had the most details of anything. It showed digits of some kind, whatever they are. I can't say, I can't confirm. I'm just relaying the kind of observation process.
And the photos are great. The photos that you took really came out nice.
This is the dirt road. This is the habitat in the area. And these were the tracks then. This was that first track that was across. That would have been the one where Brian is, right over here by the car. And these two are up here. And we have them marked with these flags, which are by Emily of the Forest Fleur, and they're awesome. I definitely recommend them because they come in handy. This time, really great. I mean, we've used them before just as a great little marker. They're a fun item. But let's get to the kind of the details. All right, so here is we pulled the tracks. This is the one that showed the details. So it came out good. Luckily, I really was scared. You guys remember my reaction? I was worried that I'd messed up.
That waiting that half hour was intense.
I just thought I messed it up.
Yeah,
it was thick. And Cliff recommended pouring from the bottom up, just so it didn't all flow down and basically take anything out. So we kind of poured from the bottom up, and towards the end, right where these digits were, I started kind of running out of plaster.
I got it all on film.
And I'm scraping it out, and I got as much as I could out, and luckily it all set in. And then when we pulled the track, I mean, these are the full 3 tracks that we got. So the 2 on the left, not a whole lot of detail. I mean, the substrate in New England is 99% of the time complete garbage for tracking anything.
And even though the tracks weren't good to cast, we wanted it for size. We wanted size comparisons.
Sure. Right.
And they're 16, these tracks are 16, 17 inches long and over, 6 inches wide. That's a big foot. Now, Dave Green sent me something. He's in the chat. Dave Green.
Dave Green has a good comment. He says pictures from many different angles can be used to create 3D models by photogrammetry. That's kind of like the thing that Isaac Tien did on that special on the PG film they did a couple months ago here, where they took different videos and kind of you overlay them almost. But there's also even something. There's these 3D scanning apps, and Tate has used one when we were in Florida when we found that panther track, and he got that 3D scan. Now my smartphone isn't good enough to support some of those newer apps, and we flew out the door, so we really didn't have any time that day to set up something like that. I obviously regret now that I don't have that, but obviously here we have the photo, and I'm just gonna pause this for a second. Stop screen. I'm gonna full screen myself just so I can show. I have this track here. I have one of the ones here, and I just gotta move this whole thing over. Let's see.
That's like gold right there.
So
he was cuddling it that other night.
He slept with it.
So here it is. So kind of hard to tell, but up here, that's where these digits are. Digits of what? Again, I don't know, but
yeah, and people got to understand that's all overcast, I should say.
You can it's maybe too bright, but you can
Try
see
from the bottom. Other side,
like that. I may be too bright. My camera's not great. Also, this is just my laptop camera, so it's not going to be very good. We'll stick to the pictures, but I do just want to show.
Just while you just faced it toward us like that, you can see the digits.
So there's that, just to kind of let people see it. The lighting is not good. I was trying to see if I could hook up something to be able to have like a camera on here, but we'll just go back to the photos, because those photos are good.
Just so you guys know right now, so someone that I know is at the spot, and someone put up new posted signs.
What do you mean? What do you mean by posted signs?
Like, do not, like, no trespassing.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Apparently. I literally just got the email right now.
Within like the past few days.
They're probably like, we had two sketchy guys that were just standing around for 2 hours.
Probably. They're looking at the ground and screaming. I have no idea what they were doing.
We're looking at the ground. Now, you guys don't understand what we went through while waiting for Alex.
It took me about almost an hour and a half or two to get there.
The what we had to deal with without having to tell people what we're doing. We look so sketchy. And now that there's posted signs that saying no trespassing, that's weird.
And that's public land too.
Yeah,
so that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's odd.
Yeah,
so we'll have to look into that, but I don't want to talk. Give any locations or anything like that away. But we'll look more into that. But Mike from Tactical Bigfoot Research is heavy in the photogrammetry. This is a really cool way. Yeah, it's really cool to have the digital cast. And again, I wish we had that.
Yeah, we just didn't have the right phone for it.
We'll be right back, guys.
Go for it. So Grasshopper says there's a smaller footprint in the middle of that one. Look at it again. I don't know.
That's probably where the branch.
That's So if
that's where the branch.
So that was the branch.
That was referring to that in the middle. Yeah, that there was what appeared, and and I first thought maybe was it a bear? Was that the pad? That was the way it stepped. Let me see if I can go back to this photo. Yeah, so I thought maybe it was that a pad, and those are the digits. I don't believe it's a bear. I don't know what it is, and I can't say, but I don't think it's a bear just based on there's only 4 digits visible, so if a 5th digit would not be seen if it was the bear, and the placement of the digits are kind of odd to be a bear, which would be the most likely candidate in a place like New Hampshire for something footprint like. So there's that. I'm trying to just go back to, so we'll go back to this photo. So there you can see digits of some kind. I don't know. Grasshopper says, not saying it's a bear, maybe smaller Sasquatch. I don't know. It's possible. I again, I can't claim what it is or what it isn't. Just definitely found that.
And what's great is David Green sent me something the other day when I posted the pictures. He's like, he sent me this shoe comparison size for the size of the tracks to what it would be compared to a human, and it would have to be a size 26 shoe for a man and size 27.5 for a woman. So it's a big shoe.
Yeah, definitely is.
So here's a question from Donald Fuller. And guys, questions are welcome. Obviously, we're here to discuss this. We're not making any definitive claims. It's just, it's regardless of the fact that Evan claimed to see a Sasquatch in this area, that shouldn't play an impact in what we think about these tracks.
Yeah, we didn't see the creature make it.
No, we're obviously just trying to present what we found. No stipulations to that attached. Just this is what happened, and kind of the area. So questions. Donald asked, "How old do you think they were?" I'll answer that one first. I would guess probably pretty fresh, because maybe within the last 24 hours. I don't know.
That's what I was going to say. I was going to say less than a
because
day.
we received rain that night.
Yeah,
but not much, but it was heavier earlier on. What would be the day before on Friday.
This impression, which was the one across the road, the leaves were just sort of perfectly parted up. And I if it was a strong wind that came through, that absolutely could cover that up. So I don't, and it wasn't a very windy day, so I don't believe that they were very old. Just personally.
Now, I did move some in the video just to get a better look at it, if that's what you mean. I did move
and
some
it's all,
leaves to look at it.
I have it all on video. So
what I'm trying to say is I think that track or whatever it is, impression, could easily be covered up if a big gust of wind or something would come in and kind of take it out. Whereas the other ones across the street, the two that were basically like in the picture where we have, it'll let me scroll back. This one,
it's a perfect alignment.
Yeah, you have it going right across. If you look directly across, the two that were next to each other. I'm trying to find it here. So those ones, I don't know. Where's the picture of them without the plaster in them? I'll just go back to it. These two were. This one was a lot. It was just interesting, and my, one of the first things I said to me or to you guys, and I think you remember, was okay. What are the chances that this is like when somebody pulls a rock out? Because there's definitely been times where you can pull a boulder out of the mud or the sand, dirt, and you see something that looks like a heel, that big shape. So I said, okay, what are the chances of that? And we tried to kind of deduce what it could be, and then basically going up that.
And even jamming our feet in the embankment to see if we could
get that thing had to be heavy.
This was me over here on the side stomping in to see what I could emulate, and we did it all around here.
And I have all that on video of us doing all that stuff. So at least we, what we're saying, everything we're saying, it's all on film, so.
Yeah. So here's a comment from Jonathan. Says, must be a busy migration by. We didn't one track have a deer print in it, meaning within 24 hours a Bigfoot deer walked the same path. Not in the impressions, but we did, of course. We hiked both behind Brian, where he's standing in the photo, behind that way, which leads up to a pond. Beautiful moose habitat in that area. A pond just surrounded by woods, and in that direction we found tons of plucked turkey feathers, and I think we kind of believe it might be a roost of some kind. So, but that just shows that there's turkeys in the area. Not much impression wise. Again, that leaf litter is just not conducive. But then we went up the embankment and went that way. You could find some rough scuff mark impressions. Nothing very definitive at all, but we did find a ton of deer sign as we kept going to this area and traversed these woods for a couple hours. Tons of deer scat, tons of deer sign, just in the same area. We found multiple game trails at that point.
You even found porcupine scat.
That's right. I found a
famous animal here in New England now.
Yes. We found a couple porcupine dens. They like to go in these big rocks, and telltale sign is you'll see a little kind of cave going in a rock. And if you see the area just littered with these peanut-shaped objects, that's porcupine scat. Brian, I think you thought that was kind of funny.
I thought it was funny because I've never seen it, and it did. It looked like a bunch of peanuts on the floor, on the ground.
Porcupines,
it just shits. It just shits where it sleeps.
Yeah, it absolutely does, which is just so funny. But there's a vibrant habitat in the area for wildlife and that area. there's a state park and there's other areas around there have moose, other wildlife too. So certainly interesting.
Really nice area. Really
Plus
nice
another
area.
encounter on the BFRO.
Yes,
is literally within like a mile, maybe 2 miles.
Is this the cyclist?
Yes, the blue-eyed one.
Because Karac, you mentioned you were aware of another encounter in this area as well. And that kind of that has nothing to do with these tracks. I will say, preface again, we're not saying this is, or I'm at least saying that this has to do with that. It's just there is a history in the area with Evans.
It seems to be a very squatchy area for sure.
There's a Class A, and then there are Evan. I believe you said you have some reports from that area, and I've heard of other non-BFRO reports from that area.
I have one from Route 4, and I have one that I am not going to say the name of the road, but that is about 2-3 miles away. And then I have a lot in that state. I have like maybe 2 in that state park.
Right. I know the one that's the 12-year-old witness. I think.
Yes, that's the one that's about a mile, maybe 2 miles away.
Right.
I do want to read this one comment. Dave says, looks like they were made when it was a bit more wet and has dried a bit. That is certainly possible. It is mud season in New England, or at least it was the past few weeks. And that's basically in between winter and spring where there's still a lot of snow. The temperatures go from the 30s and the 40s to suddenly being in the 50s and the 60s. So everything starts melting. And if you don't have a proper vehicle, I've seen people in little Camrys and Corollas get stuck in the mud in these areas. And that's a great time for tracking. Probably one of the best times, in my opinion, to get tracks aside from snow season in New England, because you can get all sorts of things. And there may have been some moisture, but that embankment where this track was cast had that kind of loose dirt area. And it's almost as if something ran or walked up this in a kind of and left that really deep impression, which we demonstrate. If I did, I could leave an impression. You could tell it was a boot though when I did it. But it was if I was running up that hill and I kind of stomped right into it, that's what would be there. And there was nothing on the road itself that we found. We didn't notice anything. I mean, that road, as a lot of back roads are, it's packed. It's like packed dirt. So it's unless you really.
And if anyone wants to watch the terrain or what we did that day, I just uploaded a quick video before the show on my channel just to show you guys the area and.
Also people drive this roads. I mean, people drive these roads, and we saw multiple people driving by. So anything that would have been in the middle of the road would have been probably by the time we got to it, gone. Just because of people again driving over. It's funny when you guys were there was tons of people driving by. When I first got there, there was cyclists going by, there was cars going by, and then when we did this,
we're doing measurements, for like measurements, nobody.
Almost nobody.
No one.
It was amazing.
And the worst part is
not one.
The worst part is I had to literally stand over one of the tracks because we had some guy in a truck in a little troll boat come down, and he came within inches of running over. And I literally had to sit there like a jackass. And
I had to keep
the most awkward moment of my life.
And I'm keeping the dog away from the track, but with us, close to us, and we're not moving. I'm like, these guys, they're going to have to go around us to move their boat. Like, we would be in such dicks.
Yeah.
But they didn't know what we were doing. And we looked shady. Because we're just standing there. Like a couple of momos on a dirt road.
Yeah, I had to make up small talk to say that my buddy in the kayak, tell him to get his ass back here.
We can impersonate surveyors. Say you're surveying.
Yeah, that's what we need. We need to get some of those vests with the reflectors and say, "Hey, we're just surveying."
Yep, right. There's nothing illegal about surveying, even if you're doing it just for fun.
If Emily's listening, there's an idea for her.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. So that's kind of the full story, I guess. We walked around, we hiked around for a while, we got really hungry, and we kind of walked through the area. There wasn't a whole lot else that we saw aside from a good habitat. We obviously got our casts.
Yeah, because what we got there, probably me and Evan got there probably around 10 o'clock in the morning, give or take a little. And we didn't leave there till 4:30. Probably
Yeah, I mean, we were there for a while, obviously. And you guys had plans to go up north after this. This was just kind of supposed
That'll
to
be another one. That's for another time.
That'll be.
And I just thought it was funny. You guys called me, and I again, in the interest of just wanting to document this, I luckily I didn't have anything going on. Raced out there and was just like, yeah, let's get this casted. Let's get it all documented properly. We videoed the whole thing. We talked about what was going on. We explored the area. We've got that area definitely, I don't want to say under surveillance, but under observation or something like that. We're gonna go there again soon and check it out.
And I guarantee you it was just a local that put up that sign. Someone that lives.
I'm curious about that.
That's how I feel, is that maybe there was
it's not official.
Shady people.
It can't be an official.
Yeah. So what the person's saying now? They're saying that it's not trespassing signs, but it's
loitering.
White and red. I think he said white and red letters. I'm trying to find.
Let me see if there's a color code for that.
Great.
Bright white and red letters.
Hey, see you later, Joe.
Definitely. We'll talk soon for sure, Joe. I'll hit you up, man. Thanks for your input. Everything really interesting here because I mean he's in New York State. That's not that far away from New England. I mean the Adirondacks that we talked about earlier, very similar geologically. I know he's in the western part of the state, but still. I did see another comment though earlier. It's just so hard to keep track of it all. Somebody had said they'd seen a Bigfoot somewhere in New Hampshire at some point, and I wanted to tell the person.
Yeah, and if you don't catch it, they can easily contact you.
I know. Please, guys,
please contact us.
Any of us, we'll let each other know.
And it's great for the mapping too. It's definitely good for the mapping.
Mm-hmm.
Pharmacy Seeds Network says try using oblique lighting for overhead photos. Yeah, definitely. I'm going to do a whole with my Sony camera, not DSLR, my mirrorless. I'm going to take some really detailed pictures. These are just iPhone pictures that we took on the spot.
It's not
all I had was my Sony Handycam, and that thing is, it's good for 4K video, but it's just nowhere near as good as a DSLR.
Yeah, because it's not like we were going out to investigate or research, So this took us by surprise.
I threw all my stuff in a backpack and grabbed what I could, and I realized that
it was really spur of the moment.
Yeah, very much so, but it worked out, which I was really glad about. Here's an interesting comment for you, Brian. He says, Brian, the ones we saw were very similar, heel pushed in deep. If I ever see prints again, I'm going to use critic lighting with a flashlight or to take pictures or use hydrocal.
Awesome, Howler.
Right on.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Keep in touch if you find anything.
All of the reports that I've heard where people describe like the locomotion in really good detail, like seeing the feet hit the ground, it's like in 99%, all of them say heel hits the ground first, and then the rest of the foot falls. And Jeff Meldrum argues you can see that in the Patterson-Gimlin film, where the heel
that would make sense.
The foot flexes downward once the heel is struck. That's interesting.
That's very interesting.
So for that second, all of the weight's on the heel.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can see it, and you could see it in the video how deep
it's kind of another angle, and I do want to point out
that's a good one.
What's a good one?
This angle. This is good.
This angle. Yeah. So I do want to say, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell here. There was some parts. Obviously, this whole section here, you can kind of see. I don't know if I'm not highlighting it, but I'm going over with my mouse.
That's
that
all
area.
Extra.
That's all extra plaster that was up on the top that I kind of pushed out towards the end because again I was scared.
But it's because it was on an embankment, So
I was just worried that we were going to run out as we got to the part with the toes.
And that was the key. The key were the toes because if we didn't get the toes, you just
they would all basically look like this.
Yeah,
there's just not a lot. There's not a lot you can glean from something like that.
The first one, the darker one. We just did that just to compare to the others, but that was another good impression. But
we almost didn't even want to do, but it was just that one was just such a generic impression. But it was right to the side of it. I mean, as we have,
and it had the most leaves on it. That one had the most leaves on top of it, so you weren't going to get an impression.
Boom! So you can see 1, 2, and then that's going right up the embankment.
Yeah, and you can see all the leaves right next to it. That's what was on top of it. There was a lot of leaf on that. That's that third impression.
Right around here, yep, right where I'm holding that tape measure. So yeah, that's the story of what we found. Everyone can obviously draw their own conclusions, and I'm again, we're going to be working on some better pictures of these, and we're probably going to we're going to make multiple videos. And I know we're doing a Beyond the Trail episode kind of on this because I think it's just interesting, and we're going to get back out into this area. Obviously, Brian has the video of the initial find.
It's definitely something to watch.
Is it? It's up already on your YouTube.
It's up. It's up on my channel now, so you
channel,
can even breeze if you want to breeze through some of it, and you can show people.
I don't know if I can play here based on the language being used.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, you'll get
There's a lot of F-bombs. There's a lot of kind of. If you're religious, you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, it was a genuine reaction from what I could tell.
It was my reaction to what happened, and like I said, that's why I love having my GoPro, because anyone that watches my mountain videos, I always explain to them I like getting my feeling. I like saying what I'm feeling at the time on camera. So I'm used to doing that on all my hikes. So that's what I was doing while we were filming this, unknowingly coming up to a track.
I got a message from somebody saying, I don't know, I believe it's from the chat. Yeah, somebody has responded to me saying their encounter is actually in Michelle Soulier's Bigfoot in Maine book. That is awesome. Thanks. I'll get back to you.
Yep, I was definitely a potty mouth there, Howler.
So I put the video not in the description. I will put it in there, but it's in the comments. If you want to just copy and paste that link, you guys can go watch that either now or after, whatever works. Just throw it in there and check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely it's about a half hour long. It's just what happened during the day, and it's just a quick
Brian,
one.
I'm surprised you weren't recording.
A ton of footage as well.
I'm surprised you weren't recording for that bat dive bombing us.
Oh my God,
that would have been good.
During our little night hunt there. Yeah, it was like a rabid bat messing with us.
we lit a firework off to try to scare.
That was funny. Yeah, it was not something we expected to happen. But trucker sailor language, take my word. Yeah. That's for sure. Mothman says the length and the width look like a Dogman print.
Oh, let's not even go into that.
I think he's joking. I think it's in jest. Ryan Smith asks, Alex, are you available anytime we're in the field and need casting support? I don't want to become that guy, but I if I'm available, I would absolutely love to help you document. And I have no problem in saying, I'm not an expert in casting. I do have some experience. But like even you guys saw, I called Cliff, someone who has a lot more experience casting, just to get tips.
And that's cool because I got that all on film. So it's cool that we got you talking to Cliff on video and just what to do with the print. So there's great information in that video on what you should do when you find a print, how to take the pictures and what to do. So yeah, what a great experience. What a great experience. Sam.
Yeah, it was.
It really was.
I've never really had the situation where I've been called because of something like this. So it was a learning experience for me too, and learning how to cast on that embankment. Now I have no issue with it. I just mix it a little thicker, mix a little more than you think you're going to need. That's the lesson I'll take away.
Yeah, mix actually.
We had just barely enough.
It was that oh shit moment.
Yeah, like we want to make sure that those things got documented well, correctly, and that we didn't, muck them up.
So, okay, Tire Flipper. His comment or his or her comment earlier was about seeing something in New Hampshire. What's the best way to get in touch? Feel free to email me, message me, leave the comment in the chat and down in the comments below, and I will get back to you. My email is Sasquatch Out of the Shadows. The channel name, all one word, I guess, Sasquatch Out of the Shadows @gmail.com. Or you can contact Evan through his Instagram or Brian or Karac, anybody. Just let us know. We'll be happy to pass anything along. And I believe in that transparency and just being able to, gather some of these reports and, see if there's any patterns, see if, hey, we've got an encounter that's maybe from another area. Do we have anything that's from near where this track find happened? This is all stuff that,
and I think that's what great with what we have going on right now, especially with Karac, you and Evan, with all the documentations you guys have with encounters and bringing that together and really getting a good, lay of the land of what's going on in New Hampshire, because it it would be great so that it's more like the Pacific Northwest with talking about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would be great to have that ripple effect from this, and hopefully down the line, it's easier for people to come out and want to share their story. And
for sure. So Jonathan says, so much respect for you guys. I know how much time and money it costs. You guys did it. Great job. You know, honestly, gas is brutal now, obviously. You know, what else is new? But I was just really glad that I didn't have anything going on that day, because it would have killed me if I was busy or if I was out of town and then this happened. And I'm sure you guys could have, you know, managed, but
but it would have definitely been more hectic and more nerve-wracking if we had to have that on our shoulders, because it's something we have never done, casting. You know what I mean? So it was just, to me, it was like, oh my God, it's almost like it was meant to be. Like Alex was able to come here and help, and we came within inches of losing a couple of the tracks due to people. It was just, oh my God, it was such a roller coaster.
It just, and I remember I'm at Home Depot, and I'm basically calling Brian to say, hey, I'm at Home Depot, I'm getting the plaster, and you're like, hold on, there's somebody about to step into the track.
Oh my God, yeah.
I'm like, oh no, man. I'm like, geez, what's going on? I'm an hour away, so.
Me and Evan, we left the tracks because we wanted to go down to the pond. We wanted to go out to the pond and look around. God. And we're looking around, and we see this truck go by slow, and he puts his brakes on, and I'm like, Evan, the effing guy just stopped, and he's like, what do we do? So we start walking up.
Oh, we need to get up to the track.
He starts reversing his truck, and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to run over the track. So we start running, and we stand there. As he's backing up his vehicle, and he ain't backing it up anymore. But it was just, it was like a movie. It was something you couldn't write a better.
Yeah, we related it to like the longest like amount of time ever versus like your significant other going to labor.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And then
forever. And I'm like racing to drive, and I get stuck in traffic in Manchester.
I'm swearing, I'm like, where is this friggin' guy?
Yeah, and so then I get there, and we're looking around. There's that like 10 cyclists that go by.
Oh my God! I've never seen that road so crowded before.
Dude, it was that one moment, because then again, as I mentioned, immediately a few minutes later, for the next 2 hours, there was like no cars that went by.
It was so funny because, dude, we're protecting that one track. Okay, we have on that first flat ass track that really, just showed, we could see a little, but not compared to the other one. You know what I mean? So we got in that first flat track, both of us and the dog. Here comes a guy down the road walking with his 2 dogs. And then when they get closer, they start lunging at Chewie. So, of course, Chewie's going to protect.
Yeah.
He's lunging at the dogs. And the guy is within,
he actually hit the back of the track on the hill.
Ruining this track right here. He came within inches. And I was like, oh my God, to the point, he's staying at that one, and I'm going over to the other one. And we just look so shady for that next hour.
We had the guy on the bicycle that came back to us twice and talked to us about how he's looking for spring peepers.
And I'm like, this effing guy better not drive near our track.
You had the mailman that you thought was Alex, and you waved him down. The guy's like, are you okay? And then he just glares at us.
Hey, the people there, they passed us so many times that we started waving to them. Waving to the neighbors. We're going like this, like, yeah, we're okay.
It's just wild. I mean, that kind of stuff happens. So, I do want to say Ted Forrester says, this is how I realized that my setting was this is how I realized that my setting was a Sasquatch chats, YouTube articles from others in the Northeast. Thanks for sharing, everyone. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, Ted, same with me, man. That's what helped me understanding was
Jay Fritz says the same thing. Me too, Ted. If it hadn't been for all these folks, I'd still be carrying this burden around. Awesome to hear that. Absolutely. Now, we do have a question from Donald. Thank you, Donald. He says, is this spot close enough to you guys to keep an eye out for more road crossing during the winter? So yes and no. For Evan it is, which is, I mean, that may be the reason why he had that sighting, because it's just an area that's kind of closer to him. It's not as close to me and Karac, and Brian is in a different state, so he's a
flatlander.
He's a flatlander.
I don't care. I'm hardcore. I'm out there more.
He's definitely
out there hiking.
I will say he can get He's an honorary non-flatlander in my book.
Yeah, still doesn't change his blood.
Hey, you know what?
He's hiked more than a lot of NH people. I'll put it that
True.
way.
I've been all over them mountains.
But anyway, yeah, no, absolutely. So we're definitely Donald, and to keep answering your question,
Donald, Donald, and I do.
We're going to be out there soon. We're going to be out there soon
because your encounter, Donald, because you have a pretty amazing encounter, man.
I think
know
he's
it
over
still
in Vermont,
bothers
right?
you.
He's in Vermont?
His was in Vermont, and he told me the spot because I talked to Donald all the time in chat. I love Donald. But we talked briefly when he knew I was going up to Vermont to do a couple of hikes this past October, end of the summer, beginning of fall, and he told me where his encounter was, and he's talked briefly about it in chat, what happened, what he saw, and how it still affects some people to where they don't feel comfortable talking about it around other people, and I get it totally. But he does have a pretty cool encounter as a kid, so Donald, I hope someday you come on and share your story, man, because
we would love you to have you on our show.
Sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, just get the story out there. If you
I
feel
think
comfortable,
it helps
obviously.
because
This goes for anyone that is maybe holding on to a story, or even if they don't want to share it publicly, reach out. I mean, myself and others are, as long as you specify, you don't really want this story getting anywhere. You don't want it getting out. Maybe it's just kind of for your eyes only thing. I get those all the time. That's totally cool, totally fine. It's just great to be able to hear an encounter and maybe put it on the map and say, okay, well, maybe this will show us patterns. Because as we talked about last week with Scott, another thing I would suggest to folks in this chat as well right now, go back to last week's show or go to the Bigfoot Mapping Project website and go report your sighting. If you don't have it on the BFRO or some other database, go put it up there because Scott's doing a fantastic job. That's the kind of stuff that we need. Just have a little bit more data, to work with, and just sort of, plotting that all out there. So I hope you guys do. You guys put yours up on Scott's data.
Yeah, and you know what?
I'm actually giving him a lot of my reports.
Perfect.
And I need to do
this.
And I got to do that too. And it's
okay.
Everyone in this chat who has had an encounter needs to do that.
Brian, this one's for you. Maisie says, the real question is, Brian, can we see Chewie?
Chewie. Come here, Bubs. Come here.
Okay, hold on. Let me full screen Brian here.
Say hi, Bubs. Say hi, everyone. Say hi.
Chewie, what's up, dude?
Are you a good boy? Are you a good boy? Yeah.
Chewie's the man.
Oh, he's done with today.
He's like, I'm still wiped from you guys dragging me all over there the other day.
Chewie's awesome, though. Great
I
dog.
love that dog.
Very handsome dog. He's a
great hiking partner. He's like my American Express card. I don't go anywhere without him. So
yeah, I mean, I remember when we hiked the Watcher back in July. For folks
and you were like, dude, I don't think he's.
Yeah, I was worried. I was like, because that
gotta leash him up, man, because it's pretty treacherous going back down. And he's just running, loving it.
He's putting us to shame. I'm like, I've never seen a dog.
I'm like,
we're talking going up boulder fields in this hike is a short. It's a short hike, but it's probably, in my opinion, the best bang for your buck in terms of like a quick hike. You get up there, the view's crazy, and you have this feature called the Old Woman of the Mountains, sort of the Old Man of the Mountains, widowed rock formation. It was right across from where the old man used to be. It's a tough hike, and Chewie was absolutely slaying it. So that was cool.
We got a cool video. We got a cool video with that too on my channel. Really nice, really nice hike. It was a really fun.
It's a bit of an unknown hike in terms of there isn't a whole lot of maps about it. You kind of have to know, and I've been told by people. And
it's like a local hotspot.
It's one of my favorite places to share with people. I was glad I got to share with you. I've shared to other friends that are hiking as well. And so, I mean, anyone that wants to join me on that hike at some point, I got to get my butt up.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, you do.
You're always like, hey, man, we got to go for a hike. We got to go for a winter hike. And now we're
I know it's tough. And we were talking about, when we're out doing Beyond the Trail stuff in Florida, or, we're going to be going to Alaska soon here. It's like there's all these trips when we do these hiking stuff. So when I'm at home, I'm kind of like, I get lazy. I'm busy doing work. I don't want to have to do a lot of hiking. But when summer comes around, I'm definitely a little bit more motivated to get up there. And there's nowhere better than the White Mountains in the summer.
Well, I know Evan's wants to get back hiking, so Evan wants to do the 4,000. So I told him I'd go with him and do the 4,000s again.
It sounds like we're just going to have hiking parties.
Here's it. Jonathan says Chewie and Bandit are the Patterson and John Green of the dog world. I love that. So Bandit is a dog that we had at Bluff Creek that our buddy
I saw that dog. Yeah,
he's another awesome, and we had that weird encounter with him there at Bluff Creek. So awesome. So Grasshopper says Alex going to send you an email of what I was talking about. Did a screen grab. Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. Sasquatch out of the shadows at gmail.com. Please, anyone that wants to reach out, just reach out, or if you want to reach out to one of the other guys, I have their stuff linked down below. We've got Karac's channel, obviously Crash Course Cryptozoology, not a stranger at all to this program. We've got
Instagram. Like I said, we're kind of going to be like the 4 horsemen of New Hampshire now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's fun. Yeah, that's fun because there's not a lot going on in New Hampshire. I mean, in terms of research, there's been BFRO. I mean, Crystal Panic, of course, has been. She was the first one that I really reached out to. For New Hampshire stuff. There was Michael Eastman. I've done some documentaries on him. I talked to him then. This was all back in like 2015, 2016 when I really started getting kind of more involved in all this stuff. So I think that it's changing a little bit. I mean, I found out like people like Karac and Evan and Brian and other folks. So I appreciate everyone that reaches out with their stories and shares them. Those are obviously, as we mentioned, really interesting to hear. And I have just such a great time checking them out and look, and I'll go on Google Earth and look at where the location was and if I can ever get out there or something like that. So it's just a lot of fun. But yeah, guys, I mean, we're gonna wind the show down a little bit here. But I know you guys are talking about doing your podcast. Do you want to maybe plug that a little bit or talk about what that's going to be like?
So basically, it's going to be on my YouTube channel, New Hampshire Sasquatch. We are calling it the Wood Devil Podcast.
Oh, very nice.
And
there you go.
We're going to be focusing on New Hampshire and mostly the Northeast. Hopefully we can, get some guests on. We'd love to have Karac on and you as well, Alex.
Maybe Alex. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Who are these guys?
Live with that plaster, man.
He hasn't seen one, so
if he didn't get there in time, and our track got destroyed, no.
Yeah, that would be a big red flag.
Red flag.
So I'll show it again, folks, just for folks that may be tuning in late here. Here's that print, or here's the track. So
podcast insurance.
Yeah, and they're all and people have to realize they're all relatively 16 inches long, right?
Yep.
And 6 inches
Evan,
wide.
Evan has the other two. I'm just trying not to drop it.
Brian has one. I have the crappy one, and you have the best one.
So we've split them.
Alex gets the best one.
Well,
he's making copies and he's getting it back to us.
And we talked about this.
I'm going to be doing the high quality photos, and we're going to be
nothing but trust with Alex.
And we're going to be meeting up again here soon, anyway.
Yeah,
and I want to make copies of these eventually, and just the high quality photos is something I'm going to be doing this week. That's awesome. Just in terms of getting some better lighting. And I've done. I actually have a video on my channel I did years ago where I did videos using different kinds of lighting on the other tracks I have in my collection.
I'm going to go watch it.
I'm going to do that same kind of thing. So,
you should do a little video while you're doing it too.
I might do that. Yeah, that's actually
that's a good idea. It's kind of just
as I mentioned,
everything.
And I mean, this is, we've kind of already talked about it, but with Beyond the Trail, we're going to feature this in an episode, and we're going to go to this location and poke around a little bit more when we have a bunch more of us, as we will. Karac will be involved as well, and it should be a good time.
Yeah, definitely a good plan for one of those nights that we were talking about.
Yeah, definitely building up the Northeast and New Hampshire, especially.
So Jonathan says, Alex, that actually on the New Hampshire state flag, there isn't a lot going on there.
I think he's saying that, like, the state saying jokingly is there isn't a lot going on here.
Is that did I say that? I don't know. No, this live free or die. Come on, man. That's New Hampshire.
I would think it was really funny because there's nothing going on here. Imagine how New England that would be. Don't come here. There's nothing going on. Just leave.
Alex,
I mean, that's what I would say. Stay out of our state.
Pull out your 357.
It just says no trespassing on it.
So
go away.
That's the New Hampshire state flag, by the way, guys. Behind me, I have it right there. Cool. It's in terms of state flags, I've seen better, to be honest. But it's got to represent. I'm a flag collector, so I have tons of flags. So,
Alex, what is the best state flag to you, Alex?
Rhode Island.
Actually, I like ones that have more color. So Arizona is pretty cool.
Arizona, okay.
New Mexico, Colorado has that cool
Brian, be quiet.
Like the sea.
Rhode Island has that cool anchor. Come on.
Yeah, well, you're the anchor on our boat.
California has a really cool flag with the bear. Absolutely love
the bear
that
does
one.
look really cool. Yeah,
That's probably one of my favorites for sure. I like ones that have animals on them. Gosh, yeah. There's actually Washington State's an interesting one. It just has like George Washington's kind of.
Alex, Vermont's has a Bigfoot on it.
Oh right.
Oh, that's
I
funny.
thought I could get you with that one. I thought you would actually believe that.
I'm
sure
into
it's not a
vexillology,
porcupine?
okay?
I told Alex a fake dogman story one time when we were in New York, and it took me like 10 minutes to get to the lead up of like the obviously fake part, and I was making it up as I was going along. It was so funny. It was a story about like I was like, yeah, it was like this guy in like eastern Wisconsin in like the 1980s, and like something kept breaking into his house, and they thought it was a burglar, and it was like a 10-minute description of all that, and the ending was just. And one day he walks in, the dogman's just like sitting on the toilet, and it screams and leaves. It's so good.
I got another email here from somebody, so that's
Sweet.
awesome. Thank you for sending me that email. I'll check that out. Donald says should try smelting them like Michael Merchant does.
Smelting them,
like smelting the fish, the smelt. I don't know. I like Michael Merchant. I'm actually hoping to have him on the show
tracks
here.
or something, or
I don't know. I mean, smelt is a type of fish. I don't know.
well,
Yeah,
smelt
I just had
metal work, right? So
I just had someone write me a report right now.
really,
That's awesome.
In the same area.
I know.
Well, Kish, why don't you share it?
In the same area.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they want it shared.
Yeah, let's not.
all right.
Yeah, you can't push that, Brian. How many times do I have to tell you?
We'll save that.
I am obsessed with
later.
hearing.
I know you are.
Here, New Hampshire, don't back your truck up into our Bigfoot.
I was laughing at that.
Oh my
Maryland
god.
has a legit. Oh, I like actually. Mothman's right. I do like the Maryland flag. I had a roommate back in the day that was from Maryland. He had the Maryland flag, very unique in terms of like U.S. flag.
that is cool. That is cool.
Pretty cool. But anyway, not turning this into the flag show. But right on. Grasshopper says sent you an email screen grab showing what I was talking about. Thank you so much. He said, "Oh, okay, I get what he's saying. He cast the tracks with aluminum."
That's I was going to say smelting. I think he meant metal work. Yeah,
cool. I have seen that. That is really cool. I do not have the skills to do that, but maybe I could talk to him about doing that at some point. But I've made copies of casts with like Mold Star, where it's like an A and a B solution that you mix together, and that hardens within 15, 20 minutes. So you got to have it when you mix it. You have to have your track ready. You pour it in, and that's how you make a mold so that you can pour further tracks. And I've done that with other tracks. I have like a Patterson Gimlin track, the Paul Freeman handprint that Karac that you have. I have the mold of that and just some other ones. But anyway, guys, yeah, wrapping up here. Solid 2 hours of show. I mean, it was awesome having you guys share your encounters again. I know you guys have each individually shared your encounters. At this point, show's coming on 2 years over the past 2 years of the show. Yeah. So it's cool to have it all in one concise place. And I think we'll have to do this again because we have a lot of stuff in plan for New Hampshire expeditions and that sort of stuff. So I'd be definitely interested in doing another one of these kind of panels. Obviously, this time it was amazing because we had this kind of come into the mix. So again, we'll show these pictures again for folks. The tracks that we got. And again, of what they are, I don't know, but very interesting. So,
Alex, you might want this person for the Small Town Monsters thing.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Let me know. We'll connect afterwards.
Let me follow up with them.
For sure. Yeah, awesome.
All
right. Guys,
good. It's getting exciting. I got to tell you that.
It's getting really exciting. 2022 is going to be a great year.
Yeah, I'm excited. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you guys will find out. I mean, we're doing a lot of stuff, and I think New Hampshire, we're just trying to really focus on that, and we're going to do some multiple Beyond the Trail filmings here, as well as just getting out there and just investigating and just having fun with it. I mean, that's a big part of it, and I'm glad we got to share the finding with you guys. Make up your own minds. If you found anything interesting like this, similar, send it along. We can do a comparison. If you have any ideas what you think it might be, I welcome it all. I mean, we've gotten a lot in the past few weeks. We've had a lot of shows where we've shown a video or sound of something, and people email me with their ideas, alternative ideas. Something that's not necessarily Sasquatch related. I welcome it all. Absolutely. Good to think about it because Sasquatch is probably the last thing we should think about in terms of evidence. The chances of it being that are usually not that high. So,
well, what you want to do as a researcher is before, especially as just scientific inquiry, before you do anything else, you want to disprove your hypothesis.
Absolutely, yeah.
So,
for sure, definitely. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you both. Thank you all for joining me tonight, and thanks everyone in the chat. Questions, comments, people who've had sightings that are talking about them and sharing them. Thank you so much. This is so inspiring.
Thank you, chat. Yep.
It's so inspiring.
Thank you.
Really awesome. And we look forward to doing more shows. Next week, we're actually going to have a great show with Cindy Cadell. As I mentioned, she's out in Oregon and member of the Olympic Project, but she works, I think I want to say she's an archaeologist, but I'm not positive. I have to double check on that. She'll talk all about that, but she's worked with, government agencies out there and had a lot of really interesting encounters and that sort of stuff. So, and documentation of encounters and, working with the Olympic Project, very interesting stuff. So it'll be a very different show from tonight, but I'm excited nonetheless. So, absolutely, guys. Yeah. Thank you, Mikey. Yeah, guys, that's pretty much it, folks. Everyone have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you guys next week. And thanks again, everybody.